Hello dear friends, I'm Marina from ourstars.net, and in this video I would like to explain more about planets in critical degrees. We're going to discuss which are those critical degrees actually, why they are considered to be critical, and also what it means for you if you have certain planet at a critical degree. So first of all, which are those specific critical degrees? The critical degrees are the last 3 degrees of each sign. So basically it applies to the 12 signs. The last 3 degrees in Aries, the last 3 degrees in Taurus, Gemini, and so on. So the very last 3 degrees. Now, let me remind you also how we are counting the zodiac degrees in the correct way. So let's say that you have a planet at 26 degrees and, for example, 15 minutes. Let's say in Aries. This is already the 27th degree. So remember that we are always rounding up the degrees to the upper one, to the next one. Even if we have only 26 degrees and 1 minute, this would be the 27th degree. That's a general rule. So basically, you have a planet at the critical degree. For example, if the planet is on 27 and 1 minute, for example, degrees. So 27 something, 28 something, 29 something. These are the last 3 degrees and we consider them to be critical. Now, what do we mean when we say critical? Maybe it's not actually the best word that we can use, but it's, traditionally accepted, so that's why I'm sharing it in this way. But we don't literally mean something critical. So don't think of it as something similar, for example, to the 8th house influence or the Pluto influence, which are, about crisis in general. Here, when we say critical degrees, we mean like some kind of challenges, some kind of difficulties. But if you have certain planet at a critical degree, it doesn't mean that, there will be a serious crisis or something as dangerous or critical will happen. That's not the meaning. The meaning is challenges and basically some kind of hesitation. We are going to explain why. So it's not about something dangerous. Generally, it's about possible challenges and also weakness for this planet. Generally, if you have any planet in the last 3 degrees of any sign, it means that this planet is weaker than it would be, for example, if it was in the 1st, 10th or the 15th degree in this sign. So weakness for the planet and possible challenges. These are the main things that we mean when we say critical degrees. Now, why actually this is considered to be critical to have a planet here, let's say 28 degrees in Aries? Why is it critical? Well, the main reason is because when the planet gets here in the last section, in the last part of certain sign, it's already starting to connect to the next sign. So, for example, a planet in the last 3 degrees in Aries is also starting to transition and has some similar energy also to the Taurus energy. That's very important. It's not the same as if the planet is already in Taurus, but this is a period of transition when the planet is preparing to make this shift. So that's why we consider them critical. Here a common question which I receive is does it mean that, for example, if you have a planet on the very 1st degree in Taurus, it would also have similar or some qualities of the previous sign Aries? No, in this case this rule doesn't apply. After the planet makes the transition or the ingression in a new sign, it's a fresh new beginning. The previous sign doesn't have any impact. But when the planet is in the very last 3 degrees, the next sign has some impact as well. So here you can see all of the signs, and for example, you may find out that, let's say that you have a planet in the very last degree in Libra, so it means that the planet is also impacted by Libra and Scorpio, and that's important. And another thing which is very typical is that usually during the life of the person, the next sign may start to be more obvious. Actually, it's like it becomes stronger. Of course, your planet will always be in Libra, but the Scorpio qualities over time might become stronger. For example, I can give a personal example with my chart. My moon is in the last 3 degrees in Pisces, so I definitely have all of those Pisces, you know, sensitivity, emotionality, intuition and everything. But I also have the Aries qualities, the impatience, you know, this rushing and the desire to do something, to be active. And I have noticed that the more time passes, the older I get, the more the Aries qualities become obvious. So this is something significant to consider. Another case in which it would be very, very interesting. So let's say, I can give again an example with my chart. My Mars is also in a critical degree here in Pisces as well. So it's 28 something degrees in Pisces. So generally this planet is considered to be weak because it's in a critical degree. Pisces is also not one of the strongest sign positions for Mars, but remember what we said, that the planet has already some qualities from the next sign, which is in this case Aries. And as we know, Aries is the sign which is ruled by Mars. So this is actually an extremely interesting position. So from one side, Mars is weak because it's at the critical degree, not so strong because of the Pisces sign, but it already has some Aries qualities and connection with this sign. And from that point of view, the planet is stronger. These are actually one of the most interesting cases when we have some kind of contradiction. From one side, the planet is strong, from another side, the planet is weak. Usually those planets can act in a very interesting way. And there might be some kind of compensation. For example, like the person might be overactive or over initiative, or you know, there is something which is unbalanced. Or a similar situation would be, let's say, if you have your Jupiter in the last 3 degrees in Scorpio. So from one side, your Jupiter would be in a challenging position, in a weak position because of the last degrees, the critical degrees. Scorpio is also not such a strong position for Jupiter, but the next sign, Sagittarius, is the sign which is ruled by Jupiter. So again, from one side the planet is weak, from another side the planet is strong. And as I said, these are one of the most interesting cases when the person may compensate in some way. For example, having too many goals or extremely big goals, or you know, being extremely sensitive about how other people appreciate him, for example. So always consider this. If you have a planet in the last 3 degrees, pay attention to the actual sign, but also to the next one, because they can all impact this planet. And also with time, the next sign might become more obvious for you. Now let's share a few words about each of the planets and what would it mean to have actually the Sun in a critical degree. For example, the Sun on the 29th degree in Taurus. So when the Sun is in a critical degree, usually it affects the personality, your own desires. And very often I have noticed that these are people who are not completely aware of what they want. They don't have a clear vision, or specific desires, or they are confused about what they want, or those things changes frequently. So it's something about their identity usually which is not so stable. Of course, it doesn't mean that those people are, you know, bad people or that they cannot have success or anything like that, but there is something about their identity which needs to be clarified. They need to answer questions about what they want. Sometimes for women this may indicate possible challenges in partnerships, not always of course, but can be. So the person's identity, his ego, his own desires, and sometimes also his confidence. The sun is one of the planets which is important for our confidence. Now, if you have the moon in a critical degree, for example, like I shared, so in this case, first of all, things related to motherhood might be more challenging for you. There might be difficulties within the family, or emotionally the person may need to balance himself more, or also let's say there might be some kind of frequent mood shifts, or things related mostly to your emotionality or how you express the feelings, and family issues, also motherhood and children. It doesn't mean that you won't have children. I already have a child, I have the moon in a critical degree, so it's not what it means, but there might be something which is not typical for you, for example, to be in the mother's role, or for some reason you may need to work, for example, and not be able so much to devote to your child, or of course there are different scenarios, but these are the main areas which are affected. If Mercury is in a critical degree, it means usually that the person has some kind of challenges with analyzing things correctly. For example, he may not be so good at paying attention to details or observing things or making connections. Sometimes it may affect also how he thinks. For example, he may change his opinion, or how he connects, what kind of friendships he has. So thinking, communication, connection, and of course all of the typical Mercury stuff. If Venus is at a critical degree, usually it means challenges in relationships, in partnerships, in connections, especially the emotional connections with other people. So sometimes there might be disappointment, sometimes there might be unfulfilling relationships. Again, it doesn't mean that this is a lifelong situation, but usually at some point the person may go through such events. If Mars is at a critical degree, it affects how you take action. For example, the person may not be so initiative, or he may hesitate, or he may not be willing to take risks. Some people might be lazy, for example, so they don't have so much desire to compete or to do things. Sometimes they may prefer actually to be passive. Now, if Jupiter is at a critical degree, we already mentioned this example. It would mean from one side that the person has challenges with his confidence, but pay attention here. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is obvious from the outside. Actually, very often when Jupiter is in a challenging, difficult position, at a critical degree, or let's say with many challenging aspects, actually those people try to compensate. And for example, they may learn extreme amount of information in order to prove their intelligence, or they might be extremely sensitive, how much others appreciate them, how much they respect them. So usually there is something painful about the evaluation that the person receives, which is important for him. Saturn, if Saturn is at a critical degree, this may show challenges in being consistent or stable, or sometimes materializing certain things. And generally, of course, it doesn't mean that each of those people can be irresponsible or something like that, but it is an option. For example, the person may not enjoy so much the rules, or he may have his own rules which he wants to follow, not, the socially accepted. So sometimes also this may represent challenges in career or, achieving long-term stability in your life. With the outer planets, things are more specific because they are generational planets, and basically Uranus, Neptune and Pluto will be at the very last 3 degrees for a couple of months, and all of the people which are born during those couple of months, for Pluto this could be years actually, they all have this planet at a critical degree. So here it's not so much about the personal impact. It could be, for example, if this planet rules your ascendant, but in other cases it may just represent more social influences or impacts on you. As we know, Uranus is related to changes, to transformations, to doing something new, something original. Neptune is related to the connection with others on a subconscious level, emotions, creativity, and Pluto is about the deepest transformations, and also it brings power. But this is more like the collective power. So, of course, the personal planets, or actually the planets from the septenary, the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they are more important. And it's much more significant if you have one of those planets at the critical degree, especially if that's your Sun or Moon. It would make, the biggest impact on you. The other planets can also show some kind of tendencies overall. So that's the general information. So to summarize everything, critical degree is considered to be the last 3 degrees of each sign. 27 degrees and 1 minute, it's already the 28th degree. So the 28th, 29th and 30th degree are the critical ones. And as we say, when we say critical, we mean that the planet is weaker and it affects the areas which this planet represents. It doesn't necessarily mean something is a crisis or something dangerous or something related to Pluto or 8th house, which we call usually critical. And also each of those planets is already making the transition to the next sign. So we always have to keep that in mind. And also each planet has a different meaning and it affects different life areas if this planet is at a critical degree. So I would really love to hear your thoughts. Do you have any planets at the critical degree? How it affects you? And have you noticed this type of connection that the planet already has some qualities from the next sign? In my horoscope, I have 3 of those planets, 3 planets at critical degrees, and I can definitely say that it works very exact and it's totally true. And as you can see, it doesn't mean that, the person is completely unhappy or there is no realization for him. Of course, there are many other factors that we need to consider. So if you see that you have certain planet at the critical degree, don't get discouraged. There are many things that you can do. So share your thoughts and experience. It would be very interesting for us. And thank you very much for watching this video.